Dude, I remember this is crazy. I don't know if I've told you this before. So in Mexico, because we never took the dogs to the vet, so
Hmm.
we had a female dog, and every like year or every 6 months or 8 months, it seemed she would get pregnant and she'd have a new litter of puppies. And normally you try to give them away or you keep one yourself, but sometimes they had nine, but a few of them would die, so you would end up with six, and then you could give them away. But I remember one time there was a litter of about six or seven puppies, and my mom, this is just again the rancho mentality. She told us, take these puppies and go get rid of them. Just we're not gonna
Mm.
have them here
Give
because we
them
already have
away.
too many dogs. We don't have anyone that can take them. Just go take them. And so she made my brother and I we put them in a basket, or I don't remember what it was, and then we just took them down into the woods, and we found a dry riverbed, and we just left them there. But I remember feeling so
Mm.
horrible on the way back because they're puppies and you're a kid. I was 7 years old. Or, talk about traumatizing experiences.
And you're listening to the Brown Perspective. And today we want to have a conversation about pets and the difference of owning pets here in the United States and back in Latin America. So I want to bring my fellow co-host RO to this conversation today. So tell me, did you have pets growing up in Mexico or
Um,
here in the US?
yeah, as you were talking about having pets in Mexico or in the US, I realized it's bringing back bad memories, but not necessarily bad memories for me, but maybe bad memories for the dogs.
Yes, unfortunately, dogs in Latin America and other parts of the world and animals in general sometimes suffer quite a bit. And it's interesting because in some ways that's the one of the stereotypes that you hear about the United States that they treat animals better than people. So I know that that's a thing that I remember hearing before the United States, and then that I sort of see here as people become parents or become paw parents and start owning pets. And actually, that's one of the reasons we're talking about this topic today because we recently got two puppies. And so I'm now a paw parent or a fur parent, depending what the term is that you want to use. So I'm sharing with RO a little bit about my first couple of weeks as a pet owner.
Yeah, and going back to the stereotypes in Latin America, I do. Yeah, Mexicans have a bad reputation, or at least when I was growing up, there was a bad reputation. Maybe it's changed since about the way that they would treat dogs. They definitely treat their horses a lot better. So the
Hmm.
way that they think Americans take care of their dogs, that's the way that Mexicans take care of their horses. If you
Colombians too, we have horses as well.
I used to have a joke like 10 years ago that Antonio Aguilar, may he rest in peace, that he once came out with an album and
Hmm.
19 of the songs were about horses and one was about a female. Yeah.
And it's funny because Antonio Aguilar, I know one of the reasons his shows were so popular in Colombia was because he had a sort of a charreada
Yeah.
and all the horses and all that stuff that came with the music.
Yeah, and then he used to just riding the horses, drinking, singing, doing the whole thing. So it was something. I don't know if you could be able to do that these days. Get drunk in your own concert and as you're riding a horse. I think there would be too many potential liabilities for the promoters or for the arena wherever he's doing that.
That's true. And there are arenas I know here close to us is Pico Rivera, and they have a rodeo arena. And I know that actually I've talked about how in the past they hosted the Colombian festival there with three stages, and so it's an interesting experience. But
Mhm.
talking about Latin America, I think in Latin America, and just to kind of provide a little bit more context, is that, we do have a special and close relationship to animals in general. And I think that's because so much of our countries are more rural and
Mhm.
dogs are I mean, not dogs, but animals are part of daily life. So you got chickens, you got pigs, you got horses. And I think that, I know that I did have pets growing up in Colombia. We had a little cat and a cat that was free to roam in the neighborhood. So you used to get into fights and come
Mhm.
back all dolido, all banged up. And then we had a little dog, Kati, and then we had two um, two parrots, which were Pacheco y Rosita. So, it was a close relationship with animals, but you also like treated them like animals. Like I think we didn't give him dog food. We couldn't afford dog food, so we gave him leftover food. And
Yeah.
I know that one of my neighbors had a pig pen, and we used to take like takeovers to her house so she can feed the pigs right next to us.
Nice. And did the dogs were outdoor dogs also, right? You didn't have them indoors.
Well, I think for the most part, the thing is like our house was it was open to an extent, and it did have a little patio. So I think that Kathy in particular was more of a home dog or a house dog,
Yeah.
and the cat was the one that was really, since he could just get on the roofs and go wherever he wanted. He just used to do his thing. And at night, you also would hear him fighting with other cats or females. And so, yeah, but you did also see dogs on the street, a lot more dogs in the street.
Sometimes I forget that you grew up in the city because I grew up in a small town and I
Yeah.
make the mistake a lot of the times that to think that when I'm talking to people about Latin America that everyone grew up in a situation like that, but I forget, yeah, in the city it's actually dangerous cuz you let them out. Even if you want to let them out, it's the same thing as here. They're going to get run over
Hmm.
or they're going to run away. So, yeah, we had two dogs growing up in Mexico, and we also had pigs, and my mom had doves, and we had two cats, and I mean we had everything really. But with us, it's a small town, so everything was outdoors. And I think I know where the stereotypes come from regarding the way that especially Mexicans treat dogs, but I don't think obviously it's just a stereotype is not entirely accurate. I think there were really close bonds between us and our dogs. And if
Hmm.
anything, they enjoyed a type of freedom that they just don't enjoy here in the US or in the
Yeah.
cities because they were outdoor dogs. We used to take them hunting with us. These
Hmm.
dogs, we used to take them and they used to chase rabbits, they used to chase raccoons and whatever else, not raccoons, possums. And
Hmm.
then they were always with us outdoors. And then if we saw coyotes, because when we would go into the woods, then the dogs would like step in front of us to protect us. We would run and chase them or they would chase us. And so that we had a really close relationship with them. But I do remember, it's just that I think it was just maybe like a tough love attitude, which is no different
Hmm.
than maybe the way that the people in the small towns would treat each other. Meaning, like, okay, so the dogs would sleep outside, right? And sometimes you have to go outside at night.
Yep. To do your business.
Well, yeah, you may have an outhouse so you have to step out of the house to go, or you. In our case, our kitchen was there wasn't a connection from inside of the house. You had to step outside into the patio and then go into the kitchen. Well,
Mm.
sometimes the dogs were right in the walkway or right outside of the door, and you would step on them and you would almost trip, and then you would hurt the dog as well. And I would hear my dad sometimes like "Quítate, pinche perro," right, something like that. And I think that's where the stereotypes come from, where if the dog was doing something stupid, then it would get called out on because the dog knows better than to sleep there. I think well. Maybe I'm being too harsh on the dog, right? Maybe he's sleeping there because he's protecting the house. But come on, you know how many times is it going to happen? How many times does it have to happen for you to realize that if you sleep there, you're bound to get stepped on and you could make somebody trip? So anyway, those are the type of like that's the type of dynamic that I remember when my dad or other people would yell at the dogs and like tell them to move out of the way.
Yeah, and it's funny because whether it's in Mexico or here in East LA, dogs are still the best alarm system money can buy you. So I know the other function that function in Latin America is in as secure dogs, right? And in your situation in particular, it sounds to me too that the dogs were kind of an early warning system, and
Hmm.
also just keeping people or other animals away from the house and from your loved ones, so that they play that protector role too.
We did have the coyotes that would come down from the woods and they take the chickens. I mean, the chickens were smart
Hmm.
enough to climb the trees, but every now and then one of them would get caught slipping. And yeah, you would hear the dogs. Sometimes the dogs would scare off the coyotes, but sometimes you'd wake up, you'd come out the next day, and one of the chickens would be gone, and you'd see a whole bunch of feathers out in the patio.
Yeah,
That's just life in a small town.
yeah, and I think it sounded like, at least if I were a pet, I think that's the kind of life I would like to have. And I think that's because in some ways you let a dog be a dog. I mean, you still build and play with them, but they also were able to follow their instincts, run around,
Mm-hmm.
do their business, and just explore and get to know their environment. So in some ways, to your point, they grew with a lot of freedom that's very different from what I'm doing with my puppies now. We're trying to train them, toilet train them so they don't poop in the house because we want to keep them in the house,
Yep.
but then also making sure that they know where to go and not to go. I was letting you know earlier that we learned about the litter mate syndrome,
Mm-hmm.
about having two little siblings together. Apparently, if you allow them to spend all of their time together, that's unhealthy for them. They
Mm.
would just bond with each other, but also fight each other and wouldn't be as receptive to training or to bonding or socializing with other dogs. So it's almost like trying to provide an environment for them to develop healthy personalities and not be the annoying dogs that are either always fighting or barking or not well behaved and
Oh,
and that know where to
yeah.
where to sleep at night.
And that's interesting. So that you mean to tell me that if you just let them do whatever they do as puppies, naturally they'll just stick with each other, or you think it's just because of our culture where it's such a confined space where they're living that they don't have the ability to really venture out on their own and explore and really get away from the pack naturally, and get away from the litter naturally, as they would in like more open space places where they have more opportunity to explore and get out there.
Yeah, and I think it's the former. I think that if you spend a lot of time with just that one sibling, that you just are unable to connect with other ones. And I think when you talk about the pack, chances are that if you are in a pack or you're in a dog family, obviously you probably have the mom, the dad, other siblings who step in, who help socialize the puppies and who the puppies socialize with.
Mm-hmm.
So I think when you think about sort of wolf behavior, and then the wild is really your pack, right? Because you're protecting your the folks that you're related to by blood. And so I think, but then in the context of now you're in the city and you're trying to take either train a dog or you're trying to take a dog to a dog park so he or she can socialize with other dogs, then if they have an unhealthy personality, then that's not going to be a good experience for you as a pet owner, and then you won't be able to take your dog to
Mm.
the dog park so they can get their energy out and kind of get a little bit of that freedom that your dogs got back in the rancho.
That's interesting because the dogs will inevitably also develop a relationship around the family, right? The new pack will
Hmm.
become the family itself,
Yes.
not just its. But what you're talking about is really more the type of relationship with its sibling.
Yeah. And the interesting thing is that apparently because it also has another name, I think aggressive syndrome, aggressive sibling syndrome too. But
I've
apparently the
never heard.
other side effect is that they just fight. And actually, we've seen it with our little puppies. And I know that right now, as a puppy, they're a lot of how they're learning and
Yeah.
socializing is through fighting or pretend fighting. But I think that since it's only the two of them, and I don't think as puppies they don't know the limits yet, so they're being really aggressive with each other. So I think that's problematic because then I think they develop an aggressive behavior towards their sibling, which is also a negative side effect. So it's really
Wow.
fascinating when you think about all the psychology and the sociology that goes into trying to train dogs and the fact that they're very social like humans, right? And I think
Hmm.
sometimes some of the same dynamics play out in human families too.
Yeah, the Mexican in me is saying just let them. That's what they naturally do. That's how they're learning. But then again, I do realize that having an adult dog that is out of control and that is aggressive is very problematic. Going
Yeah.
back in Mexico, my brother was bitten by a dog, and then a whole bunch of other kids. It happened all the time, just because a lot of the dogs in the town were aggressive and they were always outside. So I mean, we knew which of the dogs were aggressive and which ones weren't. But sometimes even the ones that we didn't think were that aggressive would then just all of a sudden snap and chase someone. Maybe they had a rough day. Maybe they were going through some stress or something. Yeah. So yeah, it's important. I suppose I'm not gonna downplay that and say, I just let them play. Just déjalos que jueguen.
I
So
know.
one of the other major differences, at least here, having the privilege of being in the U.S. in a city, the way that dogs are treated, or the whole system of support system that we have around dogs. Because even though there's stray dogs on the street,
Yeah.
there's if let's say that you have dogs and you didn't go and get them fixed, neutered, or spayed, and then they end up having puppies, well, you can always, at least as your last recourse, you can turn to the shelter, and the shelter will take them, and they'll try to get them uh, uh, an adopted home.
Yeah.
So, dude, I remember, this is crazy. I don't know if I've told you this before. So in Mexico, because we never took the dogs to the vet, so
Hmm.
we had a female dog, and every like year or every 6 months or 8 months, it seemed she would get pregnant, and she'd have a new litter of puppies. And normally you try to give them away, or you keep one yourself, but sometimes they had nine, but a few of them would die, so you would end up with six, and then you could give them away. But I remember one time there was a litter of about 6 or 7 puppies, and my mom, this is just again the rancho mentality. She told us, take these puppies and go get rid of them. Just, we're not gonna
Mm.
have them here
Give
because we
them
already have
away.
too many dogs. We don't have anyone that can take them. Just go take them. And so she made my brother and I we put them in a basket, or I don't remember what it was, and then we just took them down into the woods, and we found a dry riverbed, and we just left them there. But I remember feeling so
Mm.
horrible on the way back, because they're puppies and you're a kid. I was 7 years old. Or, talk about traumatizing experiences. I'm coming back and I feel so heartbroken because I didn't want to give her the dogs. And so what my
Yeah.
brother and I were doing is we would go and we would take them food, right? So we would come home and we were eating, we would save some of the food, and then every few hours we'd go and we'd take them food. So we did that the first day, but by the second day when we went there, they were gone,
Wow.
completely gone. And so I'm pretty sure that either, I don't think they left on their own, because they were puppies. They really couldn't walk. I don't even think they had opened their eyes yet. So
Oh
so
no.
some other animal must have taken them. So it just reminded me of that. The fact that it's such a harsh life. At least here, there's the recourse of, you can go and get one at a shelter, or you don't have to put kids through traumatic experiences like that.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that there's a definitely more of a humane way to treat them. And I think here it's almost, but it also becomes the extreme, right? There's that extreme where like they're just animals and they belong outside, to then the extreme that they are part of the family and they're treated like a little human, and they have the little hospital, they have the insurance, they have their parks, they have daycare, they have specialized food, they have training, all these things which are wonderful, but it's almost like it's the other extreme. And I do have to say that I think we've had dogs in the family, at least here in the family in LA for a while, and they do become an important part of the family, and you do like and you do develop a bond with them, and then when something happens to them, you do worry, but then it's kind of, and then and the thing with dogs is unfortunately they don't live as long, so eventually you also lose them.
Hmm.
So yeah, so it's interesting how going into this process, and because of the pandemic, we had been thinking about getting a pet and a dog, but then we decided with two because at least they could have each other to give each other company, and because we knew we probably let them spend some time inside. We wanted to get a dog that was small, not too huge, not too much hair, right? Because you don't want to have a dog with a lot of hair inside the house. So it just so happened that, the suegrita's dog got pregnant and she got a litter of six, and we took two. And yeah, so now it's kind of going through that whole experience of raising them, and sort of joining some of our friends who already have dogs and pets, and obviously dogs and cats who have their own Instagram accounts too.
That's good, man. I'm glad that you guys are. I'm glad that you guys are at least like being serious about owning pets, because I still have people in my own family that when they want to get rid of a dog, they just loaded up into the truck and they go drop it off in a random neighborhood.
Hmm.
Right. So it's a huge disconnect. So I'm glad that you guys are more forward thinking.
I'm not going to speak for my partner, but I know that she had a similar traumatizing experience for her with as it related to a pet too. And I think so. It was interesting to hear that connection. And I think in some ways it's also finding a healthy balance, a healthy way to relate to our pet friends. And again, I think that is it is they do bring out um, their little personality, right? And
Hmm.
they do bring out, I think, some of the good and some of the bad. But ultimately, I think that if you have a good relationships, if you try to train them well, um, if you take care of them and love them, I think that you should have hopefully a good, fulfilling relationship with your pet. And
Yeah.
that's what I'm hoping for, what
Yeah.
we are hoping for.
Yeah. We wish you the best of luck. Personally, I've always been, at least ever since I came to the US, I've always been more of a cat guy. In Mexico, I was the opposite. I like the dogs, but maybe I liked the environment in Mexico. It was a better environment to have dogs. I'm not as big of a fan of having dogs here in the US just because
Yeah.
either I have to keep them indoors or keep them in the backyard. But I like that the cats still have their freedom. So you let them outside and they're pretty independent. As long as you don't make them rely too much on you for food and all that, then they'll go out there and they'll catch their own food.
Well, some of them at least, because I know there's some indoor cats. I remember the first time I came from Colombia and I saw an indoor cat and I was like,
Yeah,
damn,
they
that's
get
a
big. Yeah,
big cat.
if you do that to them, meaning that if you're a bad owner and then you spoil them like that, they will get big. And so that's why I prefer to have them outside and be independent. But we can save the cat stories for another day, and I'll tell you what my mom made us do to the cat in Mexico.
Sounds like we can have another podcast conversation about things that your mom made you do.
Yeah, you think the story with the puppies is bad. The one with the cat is even worse. So it's just I'll
Stay
just
tuned.
yeah, I'll leave it at that. Cool. Any other
Awesome.
thoughts as you venture into being a paw parent? Is that what you called it?
Yeah, Paul Parent, a fur dad. No, I think I'll keep you posted. I know that I'm sure that there's some of our listeners who have pet stories of their own. Feel free to share um, some of your experiences with pets, but whether it was pets that you had before the pandemic or pets that you got during the pandemic as a way to help you cope with what was going on in 2020 and now the first part of 2021. But thank you for giving me my opportunity to share my experience.
Yeah, definitely. All right. If you all out there enjoy our content, make sure to check us out. We are The Brown Perspective. We're on YouTube, Instagram, and Twitter. Nos vemos.
Ciao.